So this is going to be a follow-up video to my original first impressions review, which I actually made about 2 years ago, but I just reposted it here from a defunct channel that I no longer used for consolidation purposes. If you want to watch the original video, please click the link in the card above. Disclaimer before we begin. This is my personal experience with these models. My experience with them may be different from yours if and when you do get the opportunity to try them. These specific pairs were also bought 2 years ago, and I haven't repurchased the exact same models yet. So they may have already changed some things about the shoes from when I first purchased them. Ultimately, it's always best to consult a professional fitter and do an in-person fitting. Anyway, let's move on to the actual review. So for each model, I will be discussing 3 aspects that I noted the most and that I felt like affected my experience with each shoe. So that would be the fit, the glue, and the shank. Please note that both of these shoes are the same size and they are both medium shank. Unfortunately, I took out the original ribbons and elastics for both shoes because I put them on my other shoes. So in this video, I just have single loop elastics for both pairs. But that's not how I normally sew my shoes. Anyway, let's start with the Apogee. So even though I sewed the elastics and ribbons the exact same way for both pairs, I also used the same types of ribbons and elastics for both. I made sure my sewing was durable for both. I also tightened the drawstring of the Apogee. I didn't take it out. Despite all of those things, unfortunately, I didn't feel like the Apogee fit my foot as well as the Verve, like all over the foot. Specifically on the sides, like the sides, the midfoot, and a little bit of the heel, I felt like it wanted to slip out of the shoe. It felt like that part wasn't held or supported as well as the Verve. I don't know if it's the cut of the satin or if it's the overall shape of the shoe of that part. Maybe because the satin is not stretched, I'm not so sure. I also felt that the box of the shoe didn't hug my toes as well as the Verve did. As for the glue, I think I mentioned in my original video that the Apogee's glue seems to be less elastic or less malleable than the Verve. The shank of the Apogee also felt a tiny bit stiffer than the Verve's. So as a result of the not so optimal fit, the less elastic glue, and the tiny bit stiffer shank, the roll-through feels a little less articulate versus the Verve. And I felt like I had slightly less control of the shoe overall. One thing I will say though is that the Apogee did pull me up in the arch and ankles much better than the Verve. And because of the slightly less malleable glue, it feels like the shoe still has some life left in it. Like if I were to put a number to it, this pair has maybe 10 or less point shoe classes left in them. But those are just 2 out of only 3 things I liked overall. And the last thing that I liked about the shoe is the cotton drawstring. I know it sounds odd as many dancers prefer elastic drawstrings, but for me personally, at least right now, I actually prefer cotton drawstrings. Moving on to the Verve. Now overall, the fit of this shoe, I felt like it hugged my foot and toes all over much better than the Apogee. Maybe the stretch satin in the back portion contributed to that a lot. And you know, stretch satin does make your heel portion look very sleek, you know, no bagging, no bunching. And the midfoot slipping issues that I described with the Apogee were basically non-existent with this pair, even without the instep elastic that I eventually sewed on, which we'll discuss later. Shape-wise, I felt that the box hugged my toes much more snugly, especially at the tip portion. It felt like my toes and the box were 2 puzzle pieces that fit quite well together. The glue of the Verve is much more elastic and malleable, and the shank also felt a little bit less stiff compared to the Apogee. I went over my box a little easier, however, this meant that I felt less pulled up in the arch. I actually had to jet glue parts of the shoe for a little extra strength, and my arch is accentuated more, I think, which is helpful aesthetically as someone with a low to medium arch, but it is something to be more careful about as someone with more flexible ankles. Like if I'm not careful, I feel like I will overstretch the front of my ankle. This is the reason why I sewed an instep elastic, as I was going a bit too far over, according to my teacher. And you know, we want to stay safe and uninjured as much as possible. So as a result of the overall generally better fit, especially that stretch satin, plus the more elastic glue and the tiny bit less stiff shank, the roll-through feels much more articulate and I have better control of the shoe. But because the glue is, you know, as I said, more malleable, more, I wouldn't say crumbly, but you know, it is less hardy than the glue of the Apogee, these shoes feel like they're about to die. Again, if I were to put a number to it, this pair has maybe 6 or less classes left in them. So final thoughts. Unfortunately, I did not wear these pairs continuously enough to give or to say definitively that, 10 or less classes, 6 or less classes. And I can't give like a definite duration in weeks or months. So please take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. I would say that if I had used them continuously at 1 to 2, maximum 3 point classes a week, the Verve might last me maybe 1 to 1.5 months, and the Apogee maybe 2 to 2.5 months. Though again, please note that point shoe life varies greatly from dancer to dancer, and you might live in a climate or environment that helps your shoes last longer. I live in a hot and humid climate, so if I don't take extra precautions like putting silica gel in my shoes, making sure that the bag is always dry, things like that, if I don't take those extra precautions, my shoes will die on me much faster, especially in the summer. Still though, 1 to 2.5 months is a lot more than how long my block Axioms lasted me. Those stayed alive for just 2 weeks and then they died. I tried resurrecting them with jet glue, and it did help a little bit, but only for another week. If I were to repurchase, I would probably repurchase the Verve but in a harder shank. I believe they also come in hard and double hard shanks, though I'm just not sure if they stock those regularly. I guess just visit the Virtisse site to be sure. Both shoes though I think have a profile that's a tiny bit high for me, specifically in the tops of the toes or like at the very tip of the point shoe. So if I don't use certain toe pads or have certain additions to my shoes, I will get bruised toenails. It's not super high, I guess I could make it work, but I've had some slightly lower profile shoes in that portion of the foot before. That said though, I saw that Virtisse released some new models, I think most if not all of which are low profile. I am curious and I want to try them out, but I still have some other shoes to go through right now, and buying one of each of the new models will be a little expensive. If and when I do get my hands on them though, I will review them, but not anytime soon. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or if you want to see me review my other point shoes. If you have tried the new low-profile models by Virtisse, let me know also in the comments what your experience was with them. I am quite curious. That is all for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.